sharing ReSounding Wholeness, Wisdom of the Elders, a conversation series that was born out of one of my ReSounding Wholeness conversation experiences with my mother, Phyllis Robb, in December of last year. And after spending that time with her, I realized that it was really, really important for me to start bringing wise elders, people who are of a certain age, maybe a little older than me, together in this format to hear about their life, hear about their wisdom. And I'm going to start our time together before we dive in with Donna Patterson today to share my statement for why Resounding Wholeness Conversations. And so here it goes. In a world that idolizes celebrities, gurus, athletes, fashion, the latest trends, technology, media, and more, it is my goal to highlight human beings who are sharing their unique, incredible soul's purpose and service in the world. While they may not have the biggest following or even be on social media, these courageous beings are making an incredible impact in the world, creating energetic ripples that will collectively serve to move mountains and reshape the future of humanity on this planet. We hope to encourage and inspire more people to reconnect with their unique gifts, step into their true soul's calling, take actions to serve humanity, and be a way shower at this pivotal time in history and herstory. So my sense is that having grown up in the United States, I've noticed over the years that the elders have been disconnected not only from the younger generations, but just in general in society. We have this tendency in the me generations to not only have our parents wanting to be independent and doing their own thing, but also us as children not really wanting to take responsibility for our elders as they get older. And so I feel like have been isolating a lot of our seniors in ways that is not helpful for the future of humanity, and that we need to revitalize the value and worth and respect of our elders and learn from them and listen to them and spend time with them. And so it's my sincere pleasure to welcome Donna Patterson, who I have known now for just over 6 years, although we feel like it's been a lifetime. And Donna has had an amazing cat-like life, the 9 lives of Donna Patterson. So many different experiences, life experiences along the way. So I'm looking forward to having her share more about herself and her path and where she is today, and maybe what she thinks about the future, what the future will hold. So Donna, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I think we're gonna dive in. And one of the things that I've stated, the theme for our conversation is making a difference as a senior in the United States. And so I'm excited to just see where this conversation takes us. So Donna, can you please share a bit about your life journey, where you grew up, your family, work path, direction, and maybe moments along your journey that led to you where you are now? This maybe just the key points, things that you want to share with the group, right? I know it's like, here, how do I share a lifetime in a short period of
Well,
time?
especially as a senior. So we were just having this conversation about boomers, and I'm a boomer, early end boomer, who don't see ourselves as seniors or elders. You know, we're getting there. I will be actually 73 in a week. How'd that happen? Anyway, I was born in Wichita, Kansas, Midwestern, only child, older parents, shy, timid, naive, people pleaser a lot. That's the way I was taught. Part of that silent generation that didn't talk a lot. There were a lot of secrets that I found out as time went on, as years went on. But pretty much I stayed shy and timid and always had a compassion for others, but sometimes that was kind of misdirected as a people pleaser. So became a do-gooder and yeah, that's enough. But I graduated we moved when I was in high school from Wichita, Kansas to a rural farming community in Oklahoma. My dad was a builder and he was going to do some building of a development in this little town. So 500 in there. And I became a bigger fish in a smaller pond than a little fish in a big pond. And it was good. It was a good change for me. And kind of flourished there, and also had a teacher and a youth director that kind of took me under her wing and gave me some incentive and courage, which led me to want to go to Oklahoma State University. And my dad didn't understand why I wanted to go to college unless it was to get an MRS. Mm-hmm. But I went, and so this fish went to a big pond and got totally lost, but ended up the next year, after 1 year there during the summer, was proposed to by someone from the small town, and ended up getting married at much too young, still pretty naive, still pretty timid. Got married at 19, and then he was in the service, so training to be a helicopter pilot, ready to go to Vietnam. So that's been an influential part of our lives, my life. He served 2 tours. Which was a challenge.
Where were you based when he was in the military? Where were you?
The first year I tried to go back to school, but I finished from a community college. I didn't go back to a major college. And then the second tour, we lived in Enterprise, Alabama, Fort Rucker. Mm-hmm. So that was really the first time I had been pretty much on my own when I was in Enterprise. So that was a big growth period. Still pretty timid, still pretty naive. When he got out of the military, finished a degree from the University of Oklahoma in education, taught special needs. Mm-hmm. And then we've moved several times, Alabama, Georgia, Florida. And I taught special education. Had an opportunity, we adopted a child before we left Oklahoma. He was 6 months old. The minute I held him, he was mine. Anyway, we lived in Panama City Beach, Florida, in the panhandle of Florida for several years, and I had an opportunity to come to Nashville to go to Scarritt Graduate School. Oh, wow. I was teaching special needs, and in particular, really involved children who were always going to be dependent. And working with their parents, I wanted to do more. So I ended up getting a scholarship to come to Scarritt, which was a school in Christian education at the time, graduate school in Christian education and church music, but combining my vocation with my avocation. I could take courses at Peabody School of Education and Vanderbilt, and ended up doing, as part of that education, doing a graduate assistantship in the Center for Clinical and Research Ethics at Vanderbilt Medical School. And that was an amazing experience. One in particular time, I found myself on the knees in this procedure room where this young woman, scared to death, was having a percutaneous umbilical blood sampling. There was some stress with her pregnancy, and she'd been flown in from Clarksville, scared to death all by herself. And I'm looking at her eye to eye while the doctor does this and keeping her calm. And I'm thinking, what am I doing here? But it was an amazing experience. My whole time at Scarritt at the graduate school was pretty mind blowing for me, this little Midwestern, and I still use the word naive girl, that I equate it to being born again bass backwards. It was difficult, but I wouldn't. There was hard personal times with my family, son and husband at the time, and so it was hard, but
So
it was necessary.
was your husband and son still in Florida while you were in school in Scarritt? How did that work out?
My husband was still in Florida. He had a law practice down there. My son came up to be here to go to school because he wasn't doing real well. He's extremely bright and a different learner. So he hoping that when he came up here, but there was some struggles. There was lots of struggles. Anyway, my husband closed his practice and came up here, and I graduated from Scarritt and went back to teaching here in Nashville for a while, and then had the opportunity to go to Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado, to get Masters of Divinity. That too was an amazing experience, and was planning to go into chaplaincy and working in hospitals, especially children's hospitals, and divine wisdom had another plan. I ended up doing my student pastorate at Breckenridge. I know, tough, but I chose Breckenridge because there was a woman minister there. I went to Breckenridge and just remember sitting in the chapel there in the old part of the church that was 1800s and just bursting into tears because I felt like, okay, this is where I need to be. So I was a pastor in 3 different churches in Colorado for 20 years. I stayed in Breckenridge for a couple of years as associate, and then went to one outside of Denver, and then a church outside of Denver, and then Alamosa, Colorado, and Southern Colorado, and then Estes Park.
Estes Park? Did you say Estes Park?
Estes Park. Most of my churches had to do with resort ministry, which is a whole different kind of ministry.
I bet.
Anyway, so I retired in 2015, and I was burned out and stressed out and exhausted, and it took a while to kind of rebuild. Basically, that's pretty much my journey in a nutshell.
So quickly, I know that while you were in Colorado, your community faced a lot of trauma while you were there. Fires, right? So you've had a history or herstory of working with people who are dealing with traumatic situations.
Right. 3 of the churches I served, well, as a solo pastor, I served 3 churches. Every one of them. The first one, there were 2 fires in the 8 years I was there, and worked on the community response team, helping people get help. The one in Alamosa had to shut down the water supply because of salmonella, and that was a pretty disastrous time. It wasn't declared disaster, but it was a major problem. One person died. And then Estes Park, fires and floods. So yes, I've served, and I've been trained as both a chaplain for disaster response and also as a case manager to help people find their way through all of the stuff to get help.
Yeah. I think it was important for me to make sure you.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, because it was, and I, part of that, again, my compassion, but also when we were in Oklahoma and renovating a hotel. I was in the 10th grade and it burned down. We were living in it, so we lost everything.
Wow.
So I knew what it was like. And every time I smelled smoke, I get this gut wrenching. I mean, in the middle of the night when your home is burning, it's a little scary.
Yeah. So do you you had the path, you talked about being kind of quiet and reserved in a lot of ways. Do you remember as a child if you had any kind of thoughts about what you wanted to be when you grew up? Did you have any sense of dreams or thoughts or interests that you thought you would pursue?
I was going to be a trapeze artist.
Oh, cool.
My dad built he'd been a welder, and so he built this swing set, and it had the bar on it, and I would be out there swinging, and I mean I was probably 6, 7, 8.
Yes.
Going to be a trapeze artist.
So you're going to go off in the circus maybe and be a trapeze artist.
But no,
from high places.
Yeah. I noticed that in Denver, I mean, not in Denver, in Nashville, they've just opened a circus training, an acrobatic, in the air training center. And I thought, ooh. And then I thought, ooh.
Oh. that was the young boomer. That was a young boomer thinking she was still in that body.
Yeah. And it reminds me of all the time.
Yeah. I love that. Do you have any other thoughts about dreams that you might have had, maybe not as a youngster, but along the way, things that you thought you were going to do? You know how you said that Spirit said you're going to go a different direction or this. Did you have any other kinds of dreams that basically in your mind you haven't fulfilled?
Well, I always wanted to be a teacher, and then I never anticipated that I would become a preacher.
Okay.
That just, what? You're kidding me.
Right.
But
especially as a woman, I don't know whether growing up that was even an option when you were a little girl.
No, and I wasn't even churched. I didn't even go to church very often.
Okay.
Except with my grandmother. I remember going with her periodically, and then we had one in our neighborhood that I went to periodically. But I've always been a seeker. As far as dreams, writing and doing creative things. But there's always been that little naggy voice in the back that said, no, that's a waste of time. You can't do that. You're not good enough. That whole piece.
And whose voice was that, do you think?
Well, I heard that a lot.
From your mom and dad?
Old tapes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do that.
Right.
So, that began to open up. Actually, more so, I've always been kind of creative in different ways, and especially as a teacher, I could do that. And working with special needs children. I think, of any dream, it would be how I can how I could have done best for them as far as encouragement and helping them in life and their families.
Yeah. That's it sounds to me like where you did start ministering, even though you were a teacher, it was the work that you were doing that became
Right. It,
ministry for you.
it was.
Yeah,
It was.
that's beautiful.
Um, yeah. But when I came to Scarritt, it was mind opening. As I said, there was some personal problems. We did some counseling. Um, and I started writing some poetry at that point.
Uh-huh. And you said that you have some poems that you're going to possibly share with us throughout the day today. Is there anything right now, or we want to keep going and see where that
Well,
surfaces?
the one that I wrote first,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one it's really easy to see. I mean, it's easier if you see it, but imagine boxes.
Yes.
Trapped by my own deceit, enclosed tightly within, surrounded by fear, doubt, anger, resentment, shame, trapped by my own indecision,
Mm.
paralyzed by self imposed inabilities. I can't, not me. There's no way. I'm just not good enough. I want to retreat down deep inside myself. It used to work. I could hide and nobody would ever know. But I've caught a glimpse of the world outside. And now I'm too restless to sleep. God help me. I have to get out of this box in which I've put myself. I'm so afraid.
Mm.
Help me to trust you. Help me to trust me.
Mm.
And those last two paragraphs, the boxes are broken,
Mhm.
not solid.
Mhm.
So,
Working towards breaking free and even reflecting on that now, and the patterns of life. How many moments in time, even as you worked through and moved past some of the boundaries you thought were self imposed, where you felt like you were back in that same space?
it's spirals.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have, and part of it, I say my mother gave me three gifts. She gave me more than that, but one was birth, one was arthritis, osteoarthritis,
Thanks, Mom.
and the other was depression.
Mm.
Because she walked through depression, and I found out 2 years before she died why, that
Mhm.
she had been sexually abused. But depression's been a part of my life a long time, and we, especially when you're in a role as a pastor or up front and expected to be a leader, you have to put on that plastic smile.
Yes.
You have to pretend, and yeah, it's hard to admit.
Yeah. There's an armor that has to go on Sunday morning or whenever you're with the congregation, and you don't have a lot of people that you can confide in. I see that as sort of similar to therapists as well,
Right.
putting on a persona in order to be perceived a certain way. but where do y'all go?
Well, that's an issue for some who are serving in smaller communities. If
Mm-hmm.
you don't find that, because you can't find your friends in the church. You can be friendly,
Mm-hmm.
but not the deep soul friends while you're in serving in a church.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's hard. So it was pretty lonely a lot of times. Um, but there were those, and if you don't mind, I would
Please.
read one
Yeah.
um, about depression because it was one that when I was beginning to work through some stuff with of the church, um, it's so important. Depression is a devil that grips the soul and drags it to the depths of darkness and chaos. Devil depression intimidates, shackles the soul in fear, numbs the mind, keeps one prisoner in the barren cell of no hope. One seldom escapes devil depression alone. It takes a magnitude of angels, family and friends, helpers and companions, ones who are willing to risk, to reach out, to love, break through the shackles of despair, shine the light of hope, piercing, penetrating, illuminating the darkness.
Mm.
And fortunately, I had those friends, although they were in different parts of the country, but um, and I think about so many people right now dealing with pandemic,
Mm-hmm.
with all of the uncertainty and unrest and the trauma
Mm-hmm.
we've been put through.
Mm-hmm.
And depression is ever present for so many people. And how do we reach out when you can't touch? There's some creative ways it's happening, but so many. And when you talk about seniors,
Yes.
our older folks who are isolated and now high risk and not able to be their independent self, um, although some are still going to do it um, as best they can.
Well, any kind of I don't say mental illness, but depression and psychological issues, like we as a culture, like um, put so many labels on it that anyone who feels themselves going down that spiral doesn't want to be honest about how they're feeling. And the problem is we're not being honest about our feelings in the first place to be able to get support. The stigma of all of that has to be cleared so that we can allow ourselves to feel vulnerable with our friends, with our families, with people who will listen and not try and fix us
Right.
and project and oh, just here's a positive affirmation, that'll, it's like that's not gonna work. So
No, and stigma is a big piece. I must say, though, at first church I served, just a small little church, kind of a suburb of Denver. People move out to the mountains to get away, to hide sometimes.
mhm.
We did for National Mental Health Month, we did a service, and there were some folks in the congregation, which a very small 60, 70 people who came, who were willing to speak up, who were part of working with persons with mental illness or in the field in some way, or also dealt with mental illness.
Mhm.
And we did that service two of the years I was there. And the number of people after the service who came up to talk to me or one of the others who'd been part of it was, I would say, the week following, I heard from at least a third of the congregation who either had a family member or themselves were dealing with serious mental illnesses.
Yeah.
So at some of the other churches, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I mean, it just wouldn't have. But that one did, and it was powerful.
That's awesome. So, so you're back in Nashville now, and how many times have you cycled through this town? 3 or 4 times? 5 times?
Well, to live here, I mean, I've been in and out because I had good friends here. This is my kind of my third time.
Third time. Okay. Some of the standout experiences in your life that surpassed your expectations.
Well, my experience coming to Scarritt initially. My time in ministry, there were many different stand out wow moments. Some of those had to do with being with people who were transitioning from this life as a very sacred time. And and then on another note, when I served in Breckenridge, that's a wedding destination spot. So I've done weddings from the top of the mountain, knee deep in snow, in sleigh rides, in hot air balloons.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I did well over in the 2.5, 3 years. I was there well over 100 more weddings. Yeah. A lot of them in the church too, but it's a destination place, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And again, the disaster response, walking with people in different places. I had an opportunity in 2018. Gosh, it's only been just in a kind of, I say in a lot of my experiences, I've kind of backed in and all of a sudden realized, oh, what am I doing here? Kind of ministry was like that. But after a comment made of, oh, I'll go help you watch the dogs, I ended up in Germany for 4 months with a young couple and friends. And that was, and I took the Queen Mary 2 going over. I just decided that I'd never get that chance again. Landed in Hamburg, Germany, and visited that, and then went to Wiesbaden, Kloppenheim, and had an opportunity to go to Chartres Cathedral in France and do a workshop with the Labyrinth and Lauren Artras, who's from Grace Cathedral in San Francisco. I had worked with her before years ago, done a workshop with her on the Labyrinth, and the title of this week-long experience in Chartres was The Path of the Holy Fool. And I said, oh, I resemble that. So I took the train and made it through the Paris tunnels of, the trains getting through Paris. And spent a week in Chartres, and we did, the cathedral's amazing if you haven't been there, but we had the opportunity to not only walk the Labyrinth, which a lot of times they have covered by chairs.
Right.
It's a stone it's the stone facade, but hear the stories. But we also were able to go to the catacombs underneath with
Ooh.
candlelight, and oh my gosh, it
How did
was
it
amazing.
feel? How did it feel in there?
It was sacred. It was amazing. It was, oh my gosh. And you think about all of the pilgrims, all of the people who walked in that area, that place, all of the history. I mean, Scarritt was started in like 1050 or 90 or something like that,
Wow.
long time
A
ago. And
thousand years ago.
yeah, and
Wow.
you think about this, how many wars they've been through. And
Yeah.
there's amazing stories about what some of the priests did with these beautiful stained glass windows to hide them, especially during World War II, to keep them from being damaged. I mean, it was an incredible experience. Um, so there was a major learning in Germany, and I was not able to stay to extend my visa, as it was. I had gotten some wrong information before I left, but
Hmm.
it was okay. It was, I learned a lot about myself and what I needed. So
Hmm.
I'm back here.
Yeah. So there's a couple of things that I want to remind you of or that I want you to share about. And the first one is you took a journey when you left the ministry. You took a journey, I believe, in an RV or something along that. Didn't you travel?
I did, but that was when I was still in ministry.
Okay.
I had taken a 3 month sabbatical from
Right.
this little
Yeah.
church,
Yeah.
and I had fifth wheel and an F-250. Boy, I love that truck. um, V10. I tell you, that baby pulled up that mountain really quick.
Yeah.
Anyway, yes, I took a sabbatical, and again, that was a time when I was so tired and so weary, and I needed a break. And this can tell you, it was small church, and I had pastor friends who were not serving a church, but were in a different kind of ministry who were willing to fill in for me.
Hmm.
And one of the people on my administrative board made a comment about, well, it feels like my mom wants to leave me, take a break from me. And I'm thinking, yeah,
Yeah.
I'm in trouble. Yeah, well, going back to that people pleaser kind of, yeah, no,
Yeah.
it doesn't work. Anyway, um, it was amazing. I did. I had some interesting experiences. Yeah, the story is, I told this story at a 10x or 9, anyway, a storytelling thing.
Yeah.
Don't drive when you're tired.
Hmm.
Going across lower part of Illinois, there's not too many stops or places along the way. At least then it wasn't. And I had come out of Hannibal, Missouri, and was going across, and I was going to stop at a campground and didn't really look ahead, but finally found one that was off beaten path, a few miles off the highway. And I thought, well, I'm just going to take a chance because I'm too tired to go. And I turned the corner and got off the interstate and pulled up and saw fireflies all over these fields. And I thought, well, this is a good sign.
Beautiful.
This
Hmm.
is nice. Pulled in, and the gentleman came out. It was behind his house. And he came out and he started talking to me. And I'm so tired, but he was talking and talking and talking. I pulled in and he let me, I parked and heard bullfrogs, and they serenaded me to sleep. Of course, the unfortunate thing is about 4:30 the next morning, these trucks, farm trucks, kept going by taking produce or going to pick up anyway stuff. But I left there and still tired, drove into Cincinnati.
Hmm.
And I knew that there was a place on the other side of the bridge that I was going to stay. at a conference I was going to in Cincinnati. And saw the sign as I went across the bridge into Kentucky that travel information this way. So I turned the corner and ended up on the narrow streets of Lexington, Kentucky. And beautiful little town. And I'm thinking, I need to get back on the interstate, but I couldn't see where to turn. So I just kept going. And here's this railroad trestle. You know what here's this railroad trestle, and I'm thinking, okay, what's the height of my trailer? I can't remember, but I think I'm okay. So I just scooted down and rode under it. It worked.
Oh, good.
And then I still had to turn around, and I'm going through this little town, and I'm thinking, oh, there's a bank. So I'll turn around in the parking lot and do a U-E.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
They had a drive-through. At the time I saw it, I kind of impaled, and the bank manager comes running out. Stop. And I said, oh, I did that, didn't I? Oh, no. I said it's not.
And I didn't do this before I went under. That's why you didn't do this before you went under the bank one. Oh, no.
Anyway, and he said, well, can you back out? And I said, can you ask those people to move their cars? And he said, no, those are for the auditors. We're having an audit in the bank. So it was already a little stressed.
Right.
But he had a friend named Larry. And he had Larry come and back out for me. I got back on the interstate, and within a mile was the travel center, the great big honkin' welcome to Kentucky travel center.
Yeah.
That was the beginning. I mean, the day's not over. It was just about 5, and they told me where a campground was. Big Bone Lick. Driving again, narrow roads, overhang, beautiful country, getting to this travel center, and realized that, I pulled in right behind another RV, waited, and then as I pulled up, he said, we just rented our last space. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no.
I said, okay, do you know where anything else might be close by? And he said, yeah, just get back over here, go to the interstate, go to this exit where the Shell station is. And it's about a mile or two, or let me call and we'll make sure. And they said, and I talked to the guy, he said, yeah, go turn at the Shell station. It's only a couple miles. We'll save you a spot. Okay. Well, and if you've never been in that part, the interstate goes 2 different directions. One goes to Louisville, one goes to Lexington. And I was on the Louisville side. He was talking about the Lexington side.
Okay.
So I get back, find the Shell station, turn, and I keep driving. And again, the road's narrow little bridge. Keep driving. It's getting dark. Keep driving. And I'm thinking, I can't. It's not there. Finally found it, and I pulled in, and he said there was a Shell station on the other side too. But anyway, he said, he told me where it was, showed me where it was, and my spot, and it backed onto a creek, and it was at a corner. And I said, would you mind parking it for me? At that point, it had been a long day.
Yes, and you didn't need to back into anything other than the spot where you're supposed to be. Oh my goodness. Well, I remember that story to some degree. I thought it was very adventurous of you as a woman by yourself heading out into the great big country in that big ass truck.
Right? Well, yeah, I'm driving across, there was a part driving across Missouri. I stopped at this rural gas station. It probably is still no longer there. And the guy comes out chewing on his stick or whatever, I don't remember. And he leans on the window and he said, that's a mighty big rig you got there, girlie. I said, yep, I need some gas. I mean, it was just kind of, yeah. it was another learning experience, and it was one of those too that I kind of backed into. Oh well, this will be okay. This will be good, you know.
Yeah.
And I did do some research and practice before, but yeah, it was interesting. Lots of stories.
Yeah, there's a few more here that I want to just cover, and one of it is one of the things that you've learned. You've trained to be a laughter yoga facilitator.
Mhm.
Is that, did you learn that here in Nashville, or where did you?
Yes,
Yes, in the last, since you've been here in the last
yes,
6 years.
yes. Marge Wasney is a laughter yoga leader, and she was talking about it at Spiritual Friends, which is a group of people from all variety of spiritual thought. Anyway, and she was talking about it. I thought, oh, that might be a good tool for my toolkit because, oh, I forgot. Um, at that point, I was finishing my doctorate program, Doctor of Ministry in Spirituality and Story from Wesley Seminary. I had started it before I left ministry, and um, and I thought because what I wanted to do, this relates back to all of my disaster experience.
Mm-hmm.
When pastors walk through disasters with others and they experience um, the same thing the others, like their roof's blown off or their house is flooded or burned or whatever,
Yes.
they still have to be pastor.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard for them to be afoot in two, actually three different places if they have family to be the support for their family and their children, for
Yeah.
the church, and for themselves. So it's really difficult. And so I thought with my doctorate degree, how do we allow ourselves to tell the story in a safe space? So
Mm-hmm.
I did this doctorate and set up a retreat model for clergy to come together, or caregivers in that sense to come together to be able to tell their story in safe space. And I did led two different retreats as part of the doctorate program. It's a doctor of ministry. Um, and so that's I talked to Marge, and that was how I got into laughter yoga to do it as part of um, my work with um, these retreats and helping people heal.
Yeah. I know I've attended some of your retreats and experienced like the different types of modalities and things that you bring in to stir story and reflection. And I have some things around my space in here that I created in some of your retreat experiences. The laughter yoga, I remember too that, when we were part of a women's group, a women's circle, in the last number of years. And one of the things that came up was that people thought you were funny. Like your stories, when you were telling the stories, there is a lot of really funny moments, that have happened to you. And so you ended up, like you said, on a stage, I think multiple times, sort of not necessarily as a comedian, but telling your story that in a way that was very, very effective and very, very funny and moving. Just in your way. So the laughter yoga obviously has been a lifeline. Um, I want to sort of shift ourselves a little bit to, and I wrote down our personal time together is often contemplating life's challenges and spiritual ideas. And your soul path and work has been very focused in this direction, not only in your work life, but in your own personal, you know, path, your journey into your own spiritual essence. And I have the question, what are some of the key revelations about the spiritual life and your experiences that you would like to share? That's a big question, but sort of
Well,
seeing what's bubbling up for you in this moment.
part of that yeah, it's always been a wrestling. And what does that mean? For the, it's always been a wrestling and an unveiling in a sense, and a questioning. And I think I said earlier that I've always been a seeker, looking at different ways and trying to be open. And again, part of that came from my experience first at Scarritt, in that a lot of the one of the one of the things that a program like Scarritt or the Divinity School, theology school does is the first year primarily is deconstructing what you think you believe,
Mm-hmm.
what you've been told, what you've been indoctrined to.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's the digging deeper to really learn and grow and figure out what is it you really believe,
Mm-hmm.
and how you do that. For me, it's grace that's that grounds me, um, and an openness to understanding God in or divine or creator or whatever name you want to use, in an open, mindful way. The older I get, the more I'm comfortable and embrace mystery.
Mm-hmm.
I can't know. I don't have to know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I I trust being. It would be okay if I read something that maybe,
Please, absolutely.
um, that kind of explains, I think, where I am. Rooted and grounded in God's loving grace and forgiveness does not mean being fixed and rigid in one's being. Rather, it's a condition of the heart that strengthens and sets free the flow of awareness and compassion. Being within being within being
Mm-hmm.
becomes a never ending source of life,
Mm-hmm.
ever giving, never empty, yet always and always emptying, eternal, holy, sacred, creating love.
The That's beautiful. The sacred emptying. I'm curious how that feeling of emptying, like to continually be open to the unknown and the emptying. What kinds of things do you do to help you empty?
I did a lot of prayer and meditation, and I, I don't always empty, but the analogy that has come to me over the years is you can't fill a bucket that's full of shit,
Yeah.
so you need to keep pulling that out and keep working on it. And the mercy is a big piece of that,
Mm-hmm.
merciful grace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I don't always do it well, but some of it is writing it down in poetry, journaling sometimes. That's kind of sporadic. And just, being in different situations, coming to some of your things has been an opening, and just being out in nature a lot, and trying to be mindful of the present moment, to live in this space. Sometimes I have to say, okay, I'm sitting here, I'm breathing, sun's out, just taking that deep breath, and remind myself, I can't really live in the future, although my mind's always going here, or I can't stay stuck in the past because that doesn't do any good. So it's just, having those moments, just like what the Reiki, um, 5 points, just for today. I will not be angry. Just for today. I will not worry. Just for the day. I will give thanks for my many blessings. Just for the day. I will be kind to my neighbor and all living things. Just for today. I'll do my work honestly. You can only live in one day.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't do it as much as I'd like, but I'm working on it.
Yeah, we're on a well, I want to say never ending journey. We're on the spiral journey. We're in the process of living.
Yes.
We're always working on becoming. And I want to reflect back in on the power of labyrinth, because at the Scarritt Bennett Center there's a beautiful labyrinth there, and the fact that you got to go to the one in Chart, yes. What is your overall belief or your experience of walking a labyrinth? Because to me, there's a part, like I sense that it is a part of emptying. There is an aspect of going into a labyrinth to cleanse, to clear.
Hmm.
And tell me about your reflection on that.
Yeah, the labyrinth, and I can't remember all of the words, but there is that piece of emptying and walking in, and then the centerpiece of grounding, and then going back out into the world. It is, I think I said it. I've done some different experiences with labyrinth in late '90s. I did one with Lauren Artris at Ghost Ranch, which was an incredible experience. And then when I was contemplating what I needed to do as far as um, stay in my marriage or not, I had an opportunity to go. Actually, it was Katrina response. A group went to New Orleans and worked, but I had driven down. Most of them came down at a different time. I'd driven down because I was doing a couple of other experiences there, a workshop and then another disaster training. But the one workshop was one of the experiences we had at the labyrinth was walking, and it says in City Park in New Orleans after Katrina. Um, the woman had put some shards of pottery in the center and said pick up one when you walk, and I was walking in praying, what do I need to do? I need strength, I need courage, I need wisdom, I need strength, I need and going in, and I was maybe one of the last 3 or 4 people out of maybe a dozen. So there was a few pieces left, and I picked up one that looks kind of like a little fish, but it had been broken part of the labyrinth. So I picked it up and was walking out. I stuck it in my pocket, and she had said when we went back for our next workshop, she said something about don't forget to look. Well, I'd taken it out of my pocket. It was in my room, and then I forgot. The next name I turned it over, and it said strength. And so it was kind of like it was an affirmation, and there were some other things at that trip too. But the labyrinth, if you go in expecting an epiphany and awakening, you don't always get it.
Right.
I go out often and just walk it, and um, you know, one recently when before the election was all done, walking in just saying help, 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 and coming out it was hope, 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 hope. So they're different things, but just to be open with the labyrinth, and it's the movement, it's what is it, somatic um, part, using the body,
Yeah. Moving
the
forward,
heart.
taking
Right,
one step forward.
right. And the
So,
path will appear.
yeah, yeah. So, I so I'm gonna say in recent years, and it's particularly this last year, has been super challenging. Um, and we'll get to what the hopeful thing is. But what stands out to you most about the impact the pandemic has had on your life, reflecting back in the last year, and what bubbles up as the revelation of that experience of being an elder who's isolated in a way, you know,
Like,
because
well,
you're physically not having to be, you're an independent living person. At the same time, you're starting to feel what that
right.
energy could be like.
It's being mindful of when I go out.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm not going as near as many places, or um, in that sense, I've had it pretty easy here
Mm-hmm.
because I have a community of just a few people that we've kind of pretty much consistently kept on what we were doing, um, and I've created some other things that we can do virtually. I've part of with another woman, two groups that are women from around the country called Wise Women, and we connect and we talk about current events and what's that look like for us in our particular settings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I really haven't been impacted as much as a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, being more mindful, going out's probably the greatest thing, and not being able to travel and see my granddaughter at Christmas or doing things like that. But
So you've been pretty good about utilizing technology to stay connected with people.
yes, and
Did
it's
you?
been a gift.
Yeah. Did you have resistance to it at first?
Mm, I didn't have resistance to it. It was more of um, learning how to do. I mean, and my skills are still, you know, not real high, but I can get by and do it. I'm learning more.
Yeah.
I mean, what you've helped in that, like with the Power of Eight and some of the other things. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not jumping in and doing a whole lot, but I'm doing some.
Yeah.
And that's been, I mean, it's been really valuable. Most of the women, there's about 18 of us altogether between the two groups, um, have been, it's been a vital connection
Mm-hmm.
of being able to speak our truth.
And I think the other thing of benefit, there's a couple layers for me. My experience was this isn't going to work because it's digital, it's not real. But with our Power of Eight group, we recognized that we did feel the energy, we did feel the connection of each other in these virtual spaces. It's kind of all about intention. And there was another thing I was going to say, but go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying, when um, Thea, the other person, and I thought we would do this, we were only going to do it like for 6 to 8 weeks, just to make connection, just check in with people, and some of her friends, some of my friends, and then some additional from that. And that was, when did we start? May.
Wow.
We're still going,
Yes.
and others want
Join.
to be part. Yeah. That connection, and yeah, I mean, it is strange, and then you get frustrated when your computer or your internet goes down, or you freeze, and you want to scream at it and say, come on, I want to work. I'm
Yeah.
not hearing you.
Well, the
Turn
other
it
thing I
off.
was going to Yeah, the other thing that's really amazing too that I'm experiencing from this is you're being able to connect with people in different states and around the country and around the world, which
One,
we weren't doing actively before.
right. One of the gifts of this has been I was able to, when I was in Estes Park after the flood, after the fire and then the flood, the Lutheran pastor, the hospice chaplain, and I found a space where we could gather people and come for process called Lectio, which is sacred reading, and essentially we'd bring a poem or something, maybe scripture, most often not, to think about. We would read it and be silent, and then talk. Read silent, be talk. That was still going. That was an amazing thing that we brought to the community, and they've continued, and now they're doing it virtually, and I've been able to join in, and that's
Oh,
just
right.
been so
Oh,
awesome.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I've noticed, and you've been coming to the Sunrise Sound Circles recently with my mom, who was spending a lot of time by herself, a lot of time on her iPad, a lot of time early on watching the news and just getting progressively more and more depressed. And it was, to me, it's the live connection of seeing ourselves coming together on a consistent basis and sort of developing a bond, a support system, that I'm seeing now. She's signing up for a watercolor class and exercise classes and more things to help get her motivated, to have something to look forward to help energize herself. And so there's opportunity here um, to connect and know that that connection, while it is two-dimensional or whatever dimensional this is, um, it can serve to shift feeling and stuff. Um, so
And that's good when seniors have that capability. I have a friend that's living over in the senior housing, and she doesn't. Now her daughter comes to see her. Her granddaughter calls her every day,
yes,
but it's hard.
for many seniors of a
Yes.
certain age, like my parents, are very different because they were in the computer industry as part of their profession. But there's a vast number of seniors who are not comfortable with it, can barely even see the phone. So we need to be mindful of that. We need to figure out,
Yeah.
especially as this pandemic thing subsides, to recognize that these people are experiencing this is every day. This was how their life was even before the pandemic,
Right.
of isolation and needing connection with younger people. We need to bring back the connection of our elders with the little children and us. So I'm hoping that as we move and shift into whatever this new age of humanity is going to be in our Western culture, that we really value our seniors. We value these human beings, because we're all going to be there at some point. God willing, we make it through and we live. Like, it's time for, I feel like my generation, I'm in my 50s, that if I don't serve and work to shift that pattern that we've created for our elders, I will be the recipient of that crap. And that's not okay. It's not okay. And we're a generation, the boomer generation, have been around computers more.
Mhm.
And so there'll be a level of some of us who are just like, will be willing to keep kind of showing up in the virtual realms where we need to, um, and get back to living in nature. So I had written down, recognizing that so many seniors in our country live alone or were isolated even before the pandemic. What has this experience provided you by way of insight? And that's pretty much it. Some people are able to connect and some people aren't. And do you have any thoughts on how we can make the quality of life for aging people better after this pandemic is gone?
Well, what you were talking about is the intergenerational reaching
Mhm.
out and spending time and being present to um, seniors. There are a lot of, I've looked into some of the intentional communities, um, and many of them are age specific, just like some of the senior housing or anyway, the various complexes and different levels of care, which are all fine, but I don't want to. I mean, I lived a little bit in the complex and I did not like it. I want to be with children. I want to be around younger people where the energy and um, fun, excitement, and struggles. I mean, to be supportive, and there are a lot of models out there that are intergenerational and helping families, and helping people. We used to. I mean, years ago, you lived, the old folks grew up in, I mean, the young folks grew up in the same community as old folks, and you were always looking out for, it may not have been your grandma, but it might have been, your neighbor or someone. We've lost a lot of that.
And we return. I love seeing those programs where they bring the preschoolers in with the
Right,
seniors and let them play together, like
right.
play day. To just energize each other and to appreciate and love on each other. All of that is so important. And maybe, I feel like a lot of people are resonating around communal living, some sort of tribal esque way, little
Mhm.
homes with a community center in the middle, and I envision it being all different ages too, especially as a woman without children. My husband is 11 years older than me. I don't know who's going to take care of me or watch after me when I get, older. But I want to I want to be able to live in a community that cares enough to, check in on me or, want to come over and play at Auntie K Ray's, house and color with her, or, whatever it is. So that's something that we really can, I think we can start like envisioning and working towards that. And maybe you and I can hang out in a place like that at some point before either one of us takes off this planet.
I still want to get my tiny house someday
Yeah.
and pull around. And I think that we see some models of this, that sometimes, at the end of the news they'll do an inspirational moment or some uplifting story, and a lot of times it is the intergenerational, a senior who, like the guy who had all these baseballs where he used to throw them to his son and grandson and say, anybody want to play ball, and then the kids came out and he's there pitching to them, and vice versa. A child will check on Mrs. Miller because she hadn't been seen or just wanting to say hi. So I mean, there's examples and models of that's happening, and I think that's hopefully will catch on.
Yeah. So, I have this question. If today was your last day on the planet, knowing what you know and what you don't know, what advice would you want to give your grandchildren and their respective generation? What do they need to know about life?
Look around, pay attention, laugh more, don't take everything so seriously, and paying attention to what's really most important.
Mm-hmm.
Relationships, primarily self-care.
Self care.
Um, yeah, primarily, what's most important, paying attention to others and themselves, and don't be so serious.
Don't be. Get some laughter yoga
Get
going.
some laughter going. One of the things I had the opportunity, throughout a lot of my grandchildren's growing up is to be able to have them for the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And we played and we traveled and we did all these wonderful things. And I would tell them all the time, now remember, when I'm old, you're going to take care of me. And they go, yeah, yeah, we'll do that.
And they're thinking, she's never going to get old. Or what does old mean, right? I remember when I was a kid thinking 50 was so old.
Oh, gosh, I
And
know.
imagining, oh my gosh, what will I be like when I'm 40 or 50? And it's so nothing at all
Well, I
like I
have to
thought it would
stop
be.
and think. I mean, I'm how old? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what do you have coming up here in the? I'm going to go back. How do you remain hopeful in the midst? How do you how do you remain hopeful?
Um,
Especially after all this year, we learned a lot this year.
we've learned a lot. One of the things for a long time, when there's been some really ugh,
Mm-hmm.
or I've done something really ugh. Okay, what's the learning from this? I think monitoring what my input, what I listen to, what I um, I will listen to the news, and then I know there's a time to turn it off, and then listening to uplifting stories and messages and things that, okay, um, moving here, you can do this or do not. I mean, I'm not making myself clear on that, but it's uplifting things,
Yeah.
listening to people that are finding different ways to be present. I have a little sign above my desk here. Is we are shaped by our thoughts, and that's shaped by what we put in our minds, but also in our hearts.
Mm-hmm.
What am I reading? What am I listening to? What am I buying into?
Mm-hmm.
And and as I said, my prayers each morning I've developed with starting with myself. It's kind of based on the Buddhist prayer of, it's not Tonglen, but it's starting with yourself, the mindfulness prayer.
Mm-hmm.
May I be safe, happy, healthy, wise, courageous. I've added a lot of words to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Compassionate, forgiving, loving, and respectful of myself, others, and the world. May I live in peace and be grateful. And then I go to my family and repeat the same thing. May we. Then I go to friends. May we. Then I go to strangers. May we. Then I go to opponents. May we. Then I go to the world. May we. And that's made a big difference in how I perceive the world.
Mm.
It's not always perfect. I still can go to that rabbit hole sometimes and bitch and moan and complain. And
Would you do me a favor when we're done? Would you be willing to email me just that may I be that statement that you started where you've added all those words and email
sure.
that to me? I want to post it in the comment section of the video and then on the YouTube version of the video so that it's part of the collective
Okay.
ripples out. I would love to add that. And is there anything that you're involved with at Scarritt Bennett or in your life in the near future that is open to the public that other people could be part of, or that you just want to highlight? Um, Anything? I know you know.
We've, well, yeah, we've got several things coming up. Um, we always have Tuesdays in the chapel with different guest speakers, 30 minutes each Tuesday at 12:30. Vespers and all that jazz, which is a 45-minute service on Sunday evening starting at 6:30 with an amazing jazz trio and no sermons. They're readings, poems, and just reflections based on a theme each week. We just had Poets Corner last night. Once a month, there's Poets Corner. We're going to be starting in April.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Oh, the thing that I want to have happen. An
With-
evening of healing sound, poetry, and prayer.
Yes.
So some sound healing stuff in the chapel.
Yes, and that will be the second
Wednesday
Wednesday
of
of
the month.
the month. And then we have the Power of Eight that we're doing once a month on the first month.
Tuesday.
Sorry, I
So
have to look at my
our
calendar.
next one is actually next Tuesday from
Yes, it is.
6:30 to 7:30.
And then there's some other things that'll be coming up fairly soon. A Good Friday, just meditation kind of thing. We just finished the People's Inauguration quiet. We have the chapel open
Yes.
Monday through Friday mornings from 8 to 9. If we had more staff, we could do longer, but at least 8 to 9, anybody can come in and just sit in the silence and pray or meditate or
And
read.
anyone who's in the Nashville area who hasn't been to the Whiteman Chapel at the Scarritt Bennett Center campus needs to check it out. It is the most beautiful chapel, beautiful high ceilings, arches, just gorgeous architecture. And I've been going to the service the last few Tuesdays, and it just, not that many people are there because we're, socially distancing and all that, but it's just really, and it doesn't really matter what religion you practice. It's just quiet presence and just a peaceful respite and a beautiful, beautiful place. And I feel like it's a definitely a vortex or a spiritual haven. Scarritt Bennett Center is in Nashville.
It's 10 acres in the middle of Midtown, just a couple of blocks from Vanderbilt, and it's not part of Vanderbilt, but it is amazing. And anybody can come and walk the labyrinth as well out in the outside garden.
So finally, what do you hope for? What is your hope for the future as we move into this new year?
That we find ways to be in conversation, and sometimes the hard conversation. Been doing a lot of small groups or different areas and doing a lot of reading on anti-racism and dismantling white supremacy. And it's being named now in public places that it's like it's never been named before by our president, and, Joe Biden. And I'm going to say this, but it's important. An old white man is calling that this has to stop. Recognizing our brothers and sisters, no matter who brothers and sisters are. Yeah. So my hope is that we're able to have those conversations and break down the walls that have been built out of fear and that have led to anger and hatred, but somehow have that compassion for one another, that we're willing to hear each other into speech, as Neil Morton has said years ago. Yeah. How do we listen and really listen to one another, no matter who other is, and be willing to hear each other's stories. Story is so important.
Yeah. it's in story that we actually feel our common humanity.
That's right. And so finding those opportunities and ways, it's not going to be easy and it's going to take time. But it's so important.
Yes, I agree. Do you have any other poems that you wanted to share before we finished up?
Um, I have one since this is all about elders,
Okay.
about retirement.
Okay. Would love to hear it.
And I broke it down, retirement. It's no do-over, life like in repeat, reinvent, or is it? We do need to reinvent ourselves, new ways of being, no longer defined by our doing. A dent happens in our identity, lives that were structured by a task, a title, a position, all within an acceptable social context. Retirement, retreading past or reinventing future. Pondering past achievements, joys, failures, sorrows, and or pondering more deeply life's meaning, life's ultimate purpose. What's most important in the grand scheme of life's journey?
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Perfect way to end this. I have this phrase that I come up with. I go, I have the idea of renewment instead of retirement.
I like that.
Renewment, because who wants to tire in there, right? Who wants to tire? Let's renew. Let's create anew. Let's see anew. Let's be open to new adventures, different adventures. Thank you, Donna. I treasure our friendship. I treasure you, and I look forward to seeing how this year unfolds and what new wonders come forth from our journey. And thank everyone who is here today, who may see this in the future. I look forward to sharing another interview with someone. I haven't decided who it's going to be in February, but it's the fourth Friday of the month that I'm doing the Wisdom of the Elders. So for all of you, welcome to 2021. Be kind to yourself, to others, and raise your voices to help our elders raise theirs.
Thank you.